So hi everyone, I'm Xavier Perret working with Orange. You've already seen me on the panel and I'm afraid my presentation is going to be a lot less technical than what you've seen so far this afternoon. What I wanted to share with you is one specific project that is called Orange Pro that I'm going to explain the journey behind it, a project we did with Pivotal. But first, I want to start with how it happened originally speaking, and one of the things that began with me when I took over this position earlier this year was I was watching TV calmly with my daughter, and she asked me a simple question, which was one of the toughest questions, to be honest. Dad, what's your job? That's Anna, my daughter, 15, Generation Y. And she asked me that, and I didn't know exactly what to tell. So I know that obviously she gets bored pretty quickly. So what I asked, it's a good way to introduce me, is, okay, what I do is basically I'm a board member in startups, like on connected cars with Carbip or with Internet of Things on smart buildings, but I also write a book, now that you know that. It's in French so far, on digital transformation. So I'm in the digital space. So obviously, one of our answers easily was, I mean, your real job, she asks. So I answered quickly. I said, okay, that's easy. I mean, I'm Chief Digital Officer B2B. Do you know what she answered to me? Well, simply, what? Obviously, that's one of the definitions that we have. So let me explain my definition, which is basically, I try to transform the interaction I have on the digital space with my customers. B2B meaning from the SMBs, so small, medium businesses, so from entrepreneurs, startups, lawyers, plumbers, or whatever, to big enterprise. So I sensed that I was trying to explain to my daughter that, and she was not getting really interested. So okay, I said, okay, let me explain to you. Here is one of my customers. So I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know what I'm going to do with the project. So I'm going to ask you, let's pretend you're one of my customers. I told Anna, which is, again, only 15 years old. So let's pretend you're one of my customers. Let's pretend you're a plumber. So exactly at that moment, to be honest, my wife just popped in and said, no, she's going to be a lawyer. So, okay, let's pretend you're a lawyer. It still works. So that's exactly when Anna told me, no, I'm going to be a famous YouTuber. So again, I said, that's not the point. Let's stick to lawyer. So let's pretend you're a lawyer, you're a freelance or whatever. What would you expect from Orange? What would you expect exactly? So she told me, okay, well, you know, Dad, I mean, I don't have much time. I mean, I have time for my friends. I have time for college, but I don't have time for Orange. So I want to be sure that whenever I'm going to interact with Orange, I don't want to waste my time. So I said to her, well, you mean when you're going to call her? And he said, but Dad, I mean, in which planet are you living in? I'm never going to call them. I'm never going to call Orange. I'm going to message or use an app. And that just struck me, to be honest, because obviously all my customers today are just like calling us. But they want to interact in a different way. So that's how it started. So I asked her pretty quickly. I said, okay, let's try to phrase out what you would expect from Orange, exactly. And that's what she told me. She told me something simple. I won't be able to interact only when it matters to me from my smartphone. Easily as that, when it matters to me. I don't want to waste time with you guys. I want to be sure that whenever I'm going to interact with you, you're going to know why, in a way. That's kind of the pretty good vision, but I want it to be simple. And obviously from my smartphone, because that's the only thing she grasped, to be honest. So the day after, I went back to my team, and we started the project. And we said, okay, so what does it mean for us? We don't have a real smartphone experience. So what should we do, which is as simple as that? I'm an SMB, and basically, I'm not like Facebook where I want engaged user. I'm totally the opposite. I want an application where basically the customer will not use it. Or he would use it only when it matters to me, which is totally different. The question is, when does it matter to him? So basically, when is it pain? When he wants to do something simple, whatever the hour. And that's how the project began. And why when I want to do that? I think I shared this morning something very important to me is customer satisfaction. We live in a world where, especially in the telco business, or sharing that in France, the market is overflooded. I need for my customers to be satisfied. And oddly enough, my SME customers are not that satisfied. Why? It's because they're just calling me, because whenever the line is down, whenever they have something, they just take the habit to call. Why? Because they not have the right tools on mobile, the right experience. So I want to get them to be satisfied. And if they're satisfied, especially when it matters to them, so they will remember for ages. For example, if there's an interruption of service on the broadband, for example, which I said, if I'm doing it in the right way, meaning I inform the customer, I say, don't worry, I'm going to take you in charge, he would remember for 10 years. There are customers who are saying to me, oh, I remember Orange, I'm staying with Orange because whenever I had a problem, you were there. Why? Customer satisfaction. Second reason is obviously reducing the calls. That's my operational, I would say, constraints. How can I reduce the call? I want him to first interact on the smartphone or the web. Second, maybe if he's lost, he's going to call. And I call this incomparable experience. Is how can I raise the bar of incomparable experience? That is something that, to be honest, telecommunication operators are not that famous. So my daughter asked her, okay, we will put up a project name, and that's how it came. That's it. Do you know this place? This place is called Tofino. It's a city, pretty good area. Pretty sure the Californian guys or whatever people living in Seattle knows about it. It's in British Columbia, which means not in Columbia, it's in British Columbia. It's on the west of Canada. It's in Vancouver Island. So that's the island just in front of Vancouver, and it's in a very remote area. But what's interesting in Tofino, in this place, is it's both very remote, especially for us, because it's very far away on the west, but still it's got beers, so it's got cities. So in fact, it's exactly the project I wanted to do, is how can I make a team isolated from the rest of the organization so they don't make any compromise, so they don't have the sum of whatever constraints that they want to put to the customers, but maybe it doesn't matter to the customer. But at the same time, I want to do it internally. I want something that stretches the boundary, but still it has to be developed internally. And that's important, because I didn't want just an application. I'm getting out of this application, it's going to be out, and well, all the people were just like freelancers or whatever, and the next day I say, oh, I want to improve this. I have nobody to do this. So I want an internal team that's going to stay after that to improve the application. So hence the name Tofino. So I've started putting up a team. So that's, to be honest, how I met the pivotal guy, which interestingly enough seems to understand me, and I seem to understand them. They seem to get along with the ambition. Like, I want to do really something that's going to be focused on something that matters to the customer. The difficulty I had is, how can I make the team that I'm putting in place, the marketing, the designer, the developers, as obsessed as I am in customer satisfaction? How can I make them obsessed about measuring, interacting with customers on a daily basis as long as the development is going on? Which is, to be honest, very hard, because usually you develop an application, and maybe 2 years later, let's say 1 year later, oh, my application is not used, and then you get the feedback. How can I get the feedback at the moment of the development of the process? So I've put up a team. Unfortunately, there's no lab from Pivotal in France, in Paris, so I had to choose to make this here. Not exactly here, just before the older offices. And one of the difficulties, obviously, is I had to have French team from Orange France living for 4 months, it lasted 4 months, in the UK. And you know, that's probably why I put a rugby photo here. You know that British and French don't get along in rugby. So that was kind of the difficulty I had, to be honest. So we decided not to never mention any rugby stuff between the teams. Anyhow, what happened is the teams that were doing pairing programming and extreme programming, in a way, they just got along. And what we discovered is, in fact, being isolated, like in the Tofino place, they just were enough isolated to forget about the internal constraints. But still here, they interacted. So the difficulty is how do we interact with a French customer here and a French SMB. So obviously, there was like translation of whatever we did in terms of SMB analysis and so on. But the team developed it in just 4 months. So that's just like the really care application about the 4 months. So that's the journey I'm mentioning, which was key for me, which is there were hiccups. Let's mention it. I mean, it's just not like you're putting a Pivotal team and an Orange team and just like you're going to forget about it, get back in 4 months, and oh, suddenly you get a great application. Obviously, you have to apply the methodology on both sides, but also you have to be as obsessed as I am in terms of customer satisfaction. What will the customer need? What do we want? What does he want? And interacting with him on a daily basis. And still, at the same time, you have to make a bet. You have to say, okay, this application, I want to be bold. I mean, I want this application to be used. So if it's not in the process at one point within Orange, won't leave. I'm not doing this for like 200 customers. I'm doing this for 1 million or 2 million customers. I want to apply it to my whole customer base, which is putting pressure on the developer team. But at the same time, it's a good pressure, to be honest. And what happened is the results that I'm going to explain, which is going to be launched next month, 6th of October, to be honest, which is called Orange Pro. After 4 months only of development, where usually the benchmark is 2 years, to be honest, we are releasing Orange Pro, which is an application on both Android and iOS, where the promise just looks like this. So, again, apologies, this is in French, because I'm on the French market, but I'm going to explain. Usually, what we wanted to do is to say, okay, I'm going to have my Espace Client Pro, so whatever I need to manage my relationship with Orange, always with me, which fits obviously with a mobile and smartphone. As simple as that. That message was iterated with the customers all the time, because we wanted to fit it right. And the answer is this application, where you can say, okay, at the tip of your hand, you get all the information you need to manage your relationship. Looks like very blunt in a way, looks like very simple, but that's the way it is for the customer. Again, I don't want to say a wow effect with the customers. I just want something that is useful for the customer, and so that he will get used to use it whenever it matters to him. And he's going to download it off, obviously. So a couple of screens just to highlight what we tried to do. Again, it's going to be released October 6th. So why October 6th is because that's mapping with our what we call commercial season, so that any of our internal sales rep and so on is going to present it to our customers. On the left, you've got all your contracts. Again, you're an SMB, so you've got your own contract, your own mobile phone, for example. But you may have a broadband line. You may have others from your colleagues that you're using. You're a pro, so basically you're a professional SMB. You're either alone as an auto-entrepreneur, an entrepreneur, or you have 2, 3 people max in your company, and you manage that. And then whenever, obviously, you click on it, easily, you see last bill, next bill, and a notification about, am I above, do I have to top up, or whatever. Seems simple, but for example, as an anecdote, I thought, that's a good example, that he would like to see his 5 latest bill. So we asked the customer, and he said, no, I just want my last bill. Why? It's because it's easy then to send the last bill to my accountant, as easy as that through the phone. And that's a good example, because to be honest, I'm not the one who designed it. I'm just the boss. I just want them to be focused on customer satisfaction and customer experience. But I'm not the one to decide whatever is going to be there. I mean, I have my views, but usually they are wrong. So, other example, assistance in care is basically when it doesn't work. I mean, I cannot prevent things not to work. My broadband sometimes, even with Orange, sometimes the network goes down. So what's going to happen is auto-diagnosis, for example. It's going to be in a short time frame available in the application. So how do I do to know exactly where my problem is? Do I have to reboot my box? Or do I have to call, or do I have to press a button and say to Orange, hey, do you know, my broadband went down? Interestingly enough, this auto-diagnosis will not be available on October. Internally, we would say, okay, this is going to be available 6 months from now in the next release. No, it's going to be available in January. So every quarter, the team is implementing, even every month in the beginning, but every quarter, the team is implementing and putting monthly releases of features. And that's the difficulty, is then it has to went back into the API backend so that it got the right information. But basically, we committed to say every quarter we're going to have new things appearing. That's not going to over-complexify the experience, but that's going to be tailored to exactly what he wants to need. So what are the key learnings for that I wanted to share with you? A couple of ideas in that scenario. Couple of things. First, in that kind of project, again, I'm not the IT guy, but I see that the marketing side has to be focused. We need to, in each of the projects, I'm trying to expand that. That's my difficulty today as a chief digital officer, is we need to be focused on exactly what we want to achieve. I want to achieve customer satisfaction, reduction of calls, point. Everything else doesn't matter. I mean, I won't solve all the Orange problems and all the customers' problems. Probably the customers have many problems that may have with others or whatever. I want to be focused, and I want to deliver that experience. And then we'll see later. And when I say we'll see later, it's also we'll wait for the customer to give us our feedback, and then we'll see later what is of matter to him. Be bold. When you want to transform things, probably one of my biggest experience for that, you cannot be small, unfortunately. So you cannot be that big too, but you have to be bold, meaning you need to set ambitious goals. As I was saying, I'm not doing this for just 200 customers. I've got 2 million customers in my base, in my customer base. I want something like 80% to download the app in the end. The question is how much time it's going to take for me and how I'm going to improve on a continuous basis the experience. But I want to be bold in a way, because if I don't have 80% of my customers, it means that he would still keep calling on the other side. So my objective is really for him to download and use the app. If there's only 10%, the ambitious goal was just 10%, come on, let's not do it. That's as easy as it gets for me. Measure everything. Obviously, we need to measure. I mean, we're talking about lean analytics and so on. How do you make marketing people to feel that he has to measure everything and the experience and to quantify? That's a difficulty. So obviously, we haven't launched yet, but we put up all the tools so that we're able to measure exactly the usage and using the internal levers so that people will use that. Stay demanding means don't compromise. As I say, and that's why it's a good point for Tofino as a code name. You cannot compromise on things that, for example, the boss, my boss or whatever would say, oh, it should be blue or whatever, what didn't put this or whatever. You should stay demanding about the customer satisfaction you're expecting, the NPS you're expecting. If it's too low, it won't be noticeable to the customer. So you need to raise the bar. And that's my difficulty. And to be honest, that's the experience I've got with Pivotal. Is together, I think as a team, we try to stay demanding during the overall process. A couple of 4 things again. Sharing as part of the project. One of my big objectives is how do I make this scalable? Meaning the team that has developed this, how can I use them in their own objectives to help the others? Because I've got many other digital projects, but they learn a thing in the process. So I put up something in their incentives and so on so that they're able to share, and on the other side of the team that I've got, they will listen. The process is important. So sharing and saying, okay, that's a project, but they're going to share with others during all the steps and later within the team so that I can expand in the team is crucial for me. Improve, that's continuous improvement, obviously, but that was the key, is this is still the same team on October 7, the day after the launch, that's going to try to improve things. They're committed in a way, as committed as I am. But again, they are internal developers. That's because Orange Pro is here to stay. I mean, that's kind of our strategy. So I want the same team to stay focused on delivering and keep having SMBs using it. Learning to learn is probably one of the hardest things to say. Why? It's because the more you get into the process, the more you listen to customers, the more you think you know what is right for the customer. And it's not true, in fact. And the difficulty, during all the process I've seen it and the exchanges I've got with the Pivotal Lab is, there's a couple of things I thought was good for the customers. But I need to learn and to accept that I may be wrong and to focus. So learning to learn, I think it's key because in a way, collectively, as an organization, in a big organization, usually you think you know what is best for the customer, but he has to express it. I mean, you have to listen it. And maybe a couple of months later or whatever, he will ask us something else that we didn't anticipate it, or he will say, no, this thing, I was discussing with someone here, this thing is not of value to me. Oh, okay, let's get rid of it. If it's of no value to you, we should get over it. We should simplify it. Last part is listen to all your customers. Important, of course. I mean, that's easy to say. That's harder to put it and to implement it because you need to listen to all your customers on a daily basis. And in Orange, we do listen to our customers. And one of our big strategies is listen and respond. We listen to the customers and we've got an answer to that in our own telco environment. It's difficult to accept to listen on a daily basis to the customers because you think that when you listen to them, it's not, I would say, emblematic. It's maybe not, maybe one guy is saying that, it's not relevant because the other guy will say something else. But the more you listen to them, the more you see a pattern. And the more then you know what you should implement. So listen to all your customers. So what happened is last week, to be honest, I went back to my daughter just to finish this presentation. And I told her, well, you remember in January, I went back to you and said, what do you want for Orange Pro in a way? What would you expect as an SMB? I'm going to talk to a bunch of Pivotal and English and German guys, not many French guys from what I know. I've got a question for you. So imagine you're one of my customers. Imagine you're a plumber. So again, my wife stepped in and said, no, she's going to be a lawyer. She said again, I'm going to be a YouTuber. Anyway, that's the pattern, I know. And I asked her, what would you do next? What you want next? And that's the point. Again, I wanted to listen to her. And It's true, because I asked her, and it's exactly what she said. This is it. So don't worry, we're not going to put snapshot on my Orange Pro experience. It's just to show you that, yes, I mean, listen to your customers, but the relevant customers, obviously. But if you do it right, you will make a lot of value to your customer. That's about it I wanted to say to you. Thank you.